All right, go ahead and complete the warm-up at the top of your notes handout. All right. So looking at number 1, we have to FOIL those. So we have x squared minus 3x minus 3x plus 9, giving x squared minus 6x plus 9. That form is called a perfect square trinomial because you have the same thing being multiplied by itself twice. So again, called a perfect square trinomial. We have 4x squared minus 2x minus 2x plus 1, which is 4x squared minus 4x plus 1. And we have x squared plus 8x plus 16. And then simplifying, if you have a perfect square, the square root goes away. So we get plus or minus 5. 48 is 16 and 3. So you get plus or minus 4 square roots of 3. A negative becomes an I. So you get plus or minus I square roots of 4. 4 is a perfect square. So we get plus or minus 2i. And then 7 square root of 9 is 3. Square root of 16 is 4. So we get plus or minus 3/4. So all of the skills that we just applied in the warm-up, we're going to apply in our new set of notes for today. Today we are learning a technique for solving quadratic equations. The technique we are going to learn is completing the square. Our objective is going to be able to solve equations by completing the square. Today we're going to be able to write quadratic equations in completing the square form. Tomorrow we're going to be able to solve the equations using completing the square. So to solve a quadratic equation by completing the square, you have to first get the quadratic in the form ax squared plus bx equals negative c. So what that means is we're going to move our c value over to the right. So in the past, when we were factoring, we set it equal to 0. For completing the square, you're going to move that c value over. And if your a is larger than 1, you have to divide everything by a because your a value must be 1. Then we're going to find the middle term, which is b divides 2 squared. So you're going to take your middle b term, divide it by 2, and square it. That number gets added to both sides. Then you factor the left side because you created a perfect square trinomial. And then we use that to find the square roots and solve for x. Okay, so here's a walkthrough of those steps. So for the equation x squared plus 4x plus n, what we're going to do to complete that square is to find the n value. So the n value is the value that you're going to be adding to both sides. So that's the value highlighted in blue right there. It comes from taking the middle term, which is 4, dividing it by 2, and then squaring it. So in the case of this problem, 4 divided by 2 is 2, 2 squared is 4. So the missing value at the end is 4. So the missing value at the end is 4. So that's step 5, find the values of n, make it a perfect square trinomial. You take 4 divided by 2, square it, and then place it at the end. So that's pretty much going to be our main focus for these next couple equations. We want to complete the square by finding the value that we should be adding to make this a perfect square trinomial. So to find that value, you take the middle term, divide it by 2, and square it. So 10 divided by 2 is 5. 5 squared is 25. So the missing value is 25. It doesn't matter if the b term is negative because anything squared is positive. That's why I automatically know I'm adding the missing number. So negative 6 divided by 2 is negative 3. Negative 3 squared becomes positive 9. If the middle term is odd, then you're going to be adding a fraction. If the middle term is odd, you're going to be adding a fraction. So we're adding 25 fourths. Remember, the square goes into both terms. The square goes into both terms. And then number 4, it's 1 divided by 2 squared. So that's 1/4. And what that means for each of these problems is that by completing the square, we have created a perfect square trinomial, which means they all factor as x plus b divided by 2, so in this case 5, squared. So they will all factor as their b divided by 2. So negative 6 divided by 2 is negative 3 squared. All of these will factor. The sign here will follow into the sign on your factors. So that was positive, this is positive, that's negative, its factors are negative. So this will be x minus 5 halves squared and x plus 1 half squared. So by completing the square, our goal is to get this into a factored form that is a perfect square trinomial so that we can square root both sides and solve. And all the solving is what we're going to be doing tomorrow. So today, our goal is to be finding that missing value at the end and rewriting our equations. Okay? So here we have solve each and complete the square. So what you do is you want it to be equal to your C value now. So then you find your middle term. So you take the 6, you divide it by 2, and you square it. So in this case, 6 divided by 2 is 3. 3 squared is 9. So you add 9 to both sides. So you have to add 9 to both sides because math is a balancing scale. If I give $9 to the left, I have to give $9 to the right. So if I add 9 to the left, I have to add 9 to the right. That makes the left side a perfect square trinomial. So we rewrite it in factored form. And you combine like terms on the right. And so you have x plus 3 squared equals 11. And for today, we're stopping at that point. Tomorrow, I'll show you how to solve those. Okay, so once again, now what makes number 2 different is, if you recall from the very beginning, my first rule was that A has to equal 1. So you have to divide every term by 4. Giving x squared plus 2x equals 3/4. Now I complete the square on the left. So I take 2 divided by 2 and I square it. So 2 divided by 2 is 1. So I add 1 to both sides. And then the last thing I do is simplify. So I write the left as a perfect square trinomial equal to the right combined like terms. Okay. And then the last one. So once we have an equation where you have numbers on the right and numbers on the left, in order to complete the square, you have to move all the C values to the right. So I'm going to add 8 to both sides to start. Then when I have ax squared plus bx isolated, I find my perfect square. So I take 10 divided by 2 and square it. I add that value to both sides. And I rewrite it. Now for your homework tonight, I don't have the equals. So you're going to be doing more like what we did in the warm-up. You're going to find your C value and then rewrite it as a perfect square trinomial. So you're going to find the C and rewrite it as a perfect square trinomial, which is what I have boxed in red. You should, without a doubt, get tonight's homework done in your remaining class time. So hopefully you have, I know it's the first day of spring sports, so I know we have a lot going on always on the first day. So hopefully you can get this done. Good luck at tryouts if anybody has them. So you are doing that, completing the square worksheet. You're finding C and then rewriting them as a perfect square trinomial. So find C and rewrite as a perfect square trinomial.